pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Alex Edvick.
He's on the line.
Pat Kilstone.
Here.
Rick Smith.
Here.
Laura Berry. Here. Pam Kydra.
Here.
Judy Freeze.
Here.
And Terry Lewis Burkett.
Okay, public comment. We received a letter from Dan Kindleberger, and he wanted it read, so I will read it in full. And it shouldn't take more than 3 minutes. Okay, from Dan Kindleberg, Tuesday, October 22nd. My name is Dan Kindleberg, and I have been a resident in Kronenwetter for 10 years. I was wondering if a village resident, this is a letter that he wrote to James Small. Wondering if a village resident, me, could get a feasibility study done, since one side of my local government continues to fight over and avoiding getting a feasibility study done, even after it was voted to do so. I've been trying to gather information on this since May 13th, when the chief tried to pass it, then without any public knowledge. I was the one who got your information from Riverside to pass on to residents and board members. I was there when you came to address the board. By the way, thank you for that. I'm also under the impression that you would do a study for no charge. Is this correct? The village residents deserve the facts. I'm just trying to do my part by getting those to them, since the majority of the board would rather ignore its residents and continue to lobby and argue about it. This would mean the world to my fellow neighbors and I. Thank you for your time. Have a great rest of your day. And here he introduces himself again, Dan Kindleberg. Now to business. Attached below is an email from myself to James Small inquiring about getting a feasibility study done for the citizens, since all of you can't seem to follow the board vote to do so. Please read Mr. Small's response to my email. It is time to put this ambulance idea to rest. This very email is out on social media and has been sent to countless other residents. Stop fighting the facts and end this charade. So this is from Mr. Small, the answer to Dan. I can't do something as specified as an independent feasibility study that would advocate for a governmental body adopting one solution versus another. That's lobbying. I frequently provide support to groups conducting studies and assisting with data analysis and presenting factual data in governmental meetings. Typically, I'm doing work on behalf of a municipal body, but I would not have any issue coaching a citizen group so long as it is advocating for solutions that are supported by data. That being said, I'm pretty surprised that this continues to be a discussion, as it seems to be fairly obvious this isn't economically viable as a standalone system without significantly increasing the village's contribution. This would only make sense if there were no other options. The time and energy in this would be better spent discussing partnerships with surrounding agencies. There are very good reasons that the other municipalities in Wausau have moved to regionalization. It strikes me that there's a political consideration to having Kronenwetter on the side of the ambulance. In 30 plus years as an emergency responder, I've never had a citizen question what agency that I am from while providing them help. I'm attaching the slide deck from a presentation I gave at the Wisconsin Towns Association conference, and this link is in an article about it. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. I'm happy to try to answer them. And I do not have his slide disc presentation. So that's it. Okay, other public input, Bernie Kramer.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. My name is Bernie Kramer, 2150 East State Highway 153, Peplum. I just got a couple of communications I'd like to read to you here. and one is from James Small, and it addresses that Portage Little Chute project. He's got some brief statements here in a note. The Portage and Grand Chute projects are not representations of your situations. Both are making very significant financial investments to solve current problems and improve response. Portage was done to solve a significant issue that they were having. Portage also provides service to half a dozen municipalities in Columbia County. Grand Chute historically received ambulance from Gold Cross. They and several other fire departments and are adding an ambulance service to increase their overall staffing for fire response too. There has been lower staffing with Gold Cross, and it has been difficult to meet their needs. Grand Chute is also the largest township in Wisconsin by population and valuation. They have a massive commercial and retail tax base. The plans being executed by Portage and Grand Chute are very robust and appropriately staffed. In Kronenwetter, it appears there's no issues with response and financiality. It's low cost right now. This is the communication. Riverside had a meeting here Monday night, and this is a response from their Jody Clements, their interim fire chief, Riverside Fire District. And I'll read it. It comes to Kronenwetter, the trustees, so on and so forth. He notes, "It is my goal to give the board the information that you will need to make the best decision for your community and continue the long-standing relationship of good neighbors. I want to make aware voted upon affirmative decisions of the Riverside Fire Board." October 4th, the board decided to continue the pursuit of possible merger with Safer. I do not see our district revisiting this in the near future. 2, October 17th, I believe it was Monday, the board voted and passed an annual 2% increase for the ambulance service agreement between Riverside Fire District and the Village of Kronenwetter from 26 to 30. I am hopeful that this information will aid you in making a decision for your community and improve communication. I have been in the role of interim fire chief since September 9, 24, and have not had any communication with your department. I will take sole responsibility for the shortcoming, and I'll ensure this improvement. Please contact me with any comments or concerns. I look forward to working with everyone, help serve every person that lives, works, and visits our community. It's Jody Clements. Thank you.
Thank you, Brent. Next one, I asked that Teresa to give, she's been here. It'd be easier for her to sit back and do nothing with this ambulance because we do have coverage. She's trying to give the village better service. So I think it's appropriate that she has time to give her spiel on public input.
Thank you. Teresa O'Brien, 1825 Pine Road. I did ask Rick to allow me to make a statement tonight, so I'll start with this. Over the last few months, we have been chastised, had false statements made in regard to this proposal, as well as words that were not said by us used as quotes. Our contracted provider employees themselves have criticized us and shared false information to be placed openly in the social media space. We have offered many times to sit down with anyone and have civil conversations. We welcomed questions, and we ourselves have continued to research. The ambulance proposal was the result of a direction we were given by the CLIC committee after discussions last summer that included our then interim administrator, Kim Manley, regarding what options does Kronenwetter have for service and what are the best options, financially and feasibly. It was discussed in that meeting that Kronenwetter has room for growth and is only going to continue to do so, 52 square miles of potential growth. With continued growth comes the need for additional service. We did the research, which included talking with Riverside Chief and other staff, Mosinee Chief and other staff, State of Wisconsin Regional EMS Director, outlying chiefs, EMS directors from Hatley, Edgar, Stratford, and many others. We talked with James Small, talked with the chiefs from the 3 areas that are currently implementing new services, City of Portage, Village of Howard, and Town of Grand Chute. We spent countless hours going over the data and researching what ifs to find anything that could break the bank. The proposal was taken to the committee levels and then to the public forum by our direction and before the board. At all levels, it was passed along with creation of this subcommittee. Even after that, we have continued to research. We've heard numerous times to let the people speak. At the last board meeting, for the direction of this committee, the agenda item was brought forward to put the ambulance service out for referendum on the spring election. This item passed from the board 4-2, so who doesn't want to hear the people speak? The village board had James Small come in and do the presentation to the village board, along with an email to trustee Sharneski. Some background on that: James Small is an employee of the UW School of Medicine and Public Health, Office of Rural Health. He is not affiliated with the Wisconsin Department of Health Services, EMS, and is not up to date on all things EMS that are happening at the state EMS level. James started with stating no other areas are starting their own service. Like I've already stated, there are 3. These other areas are larger than our municipality in population, however, have all moved forward with the creation of their own service to ensure adequate coverage in their own municipalities, control of that service, including billing fees to their residents, control of rising contracting fees. There are also 2 municipalities in lower Wisconsin that have recently voted to leave their merged EMS district due to continued rising costs to their municipalities, costs that are not controlled and could potentially be cheaper to manage at the local level. James did state in both the presentation as well as that email, his opinion was that 8 EMT is an appropriate level of service for our area, and even indicated a basic level would also be appropriate. He said the numbers included in the proposal are in line with Wisconsin and national trends, and he himself indicated that he believed no false information was included in that proposal. Capital costs fit within costs being experienced in the industry today, and revenue fits with the range being experienced by other agencies, including our current provider. The timeline presented in the proposal was also appropriate. He did say 2 areas of concerns: people and money. One of the things he did suggest is to put 1 year of revenue on the initial first-year budget funding, because not all revenues is received immediately. Another option he brought forward was regionalization or merging. The numbers in a merge would not favor Kronenwetter due to the size of our village land-wise and population and equalized value being greater than other areas. Kronenwetter would fund the majority of a merge with no resources actually being located here in Kronenwetter. The southern part of Marathon County already has a lack of resources, and a merger would put our residents at a very high risk and potentially impact our insurance ratings. There was an incident recently with a structure fire requiring ambulances. No ambulances were available from Riverside due to a staffing of fire engine. An ambulance was called from Mosinee and a second from western Marathon County. This second ambulance provider took a pass. Thankfully, a second ambulance was not needed for patient transport or for any of the firefighters at that call. Later in the day, an ambulance called to Kronenwetter was passed to Mosinee due to the continued lack of staffing available at that time. Lack of staffing was in part due to their department members are apparently no longer issued pagers, and the paging system they rely on was not functioning, but also due to local merged departments have built up their full-time staffing model, thereby eliminating or downsizing the volunteers and part-time staff that would otherwise come in on some of those larger incidents. This was also not the first time their paging system has failed, resulting in putting patients in Kronenwetter at risk. They rely on mutual aid resources when additional staffing is needed on emergencies. Where would this staff and mutual aid resources come from if all southern Marathon County departments merged? What I view as a part of the problem is a much greater need for EMS resources over fire resources, so some of these merged service areas require their staff to be both fire and EMS, thus resulting in a smaller number of personnel that have those requirements. Our proposal does not eliminate the need for our firefighters. They are a very important aspect of our department, and our staffing would also open up positions for those that only desire to be EMS. There was question regarding the ambulance being subsidized by the village. The proposal includes that. Currently, the village subsidizes the entire fire and EMS budget, which includes the contractor provider fees as well as funding our EMR program. The proposal shows the amount of funding needed would be less than is currently, with having revenues to offset that. In final, During the presentation, Mr. Small stated he did not have a suggestion for, as Kronenwetter needs are different, but commented that having this committee was a great option. He was asked, what does us starting our own service do to our neighbors? In reality, it gives them more support. It gives them and us more options in the case of a major incident. This proposal was in no way created to harm our neighboring departments. It has become more clear following recent incidents that there is a need to have the equipment and services right here in our own community to serve our people when it is needed. It is about growing our services and investing in our own community. It is also about controlling costs to both our entire village as well as the individuals that have a need for the service. It was created after the research showed that it is a need for our community to build up the resources that are available to serve our community, our residents, and growing municipalities. If after this committee has done their research and the RFP that the board voted on gets completed, and it comes back to contract area EMS services, it is my strong opinion that we again go out for RFP, which allows us to put specific items in the contract that look out for our residents and our fire department staff. There is currently nothing in that contract that protects our residents' rights. I do want it noted that if it is determined to go out for an outside source to do any type of feasibility study, that due to the multitude of emails and phone calls that have barraged James Small from some of our village residents and trustees with potentially inaccurate information, that he not be chosen to do that study. He should no longer be considered an unbiased opinion. He has not taken the time to do full research of our area or our village needs, but has offered opinions without complete facts. As part of our research, we have looked into other departments in the state of Wisconsin that utilize the on-call system. Since our fire department is considered a volunteer department, that doesn't mean we don't get paid. It does mean that we do not have majority full-time staffing. That members can volunteer to cover on-call time with the expectation that they need to be within a specified time frame of the station, and we can offer them a nominal rate for volunteering their time. When they are called or paged into work, that switches to an actual wage per hour or stipend per call. There are many areas across the state of Wisconsin and the U.S. that function well on this type of system. The state of Wisconsin has recognized shortfalls in the EMS realm and have been working diligently for the last 2 years to create additional funding opportunities as well as assist with staffing issues. Does all of this sound like I am angered? Yes, you can say that I am. But contrary to a small number of individuals' opinion, this proposal was not created for me to win anything, nor do I benefit from any of this. This has been brought forward as a way to protect this village and our future. I have thought many times to wave the white flag to remove my staff from being harassed. But then I see the issue still outstanding and lives being placed at risk, and not making changes will not fix any of that. Yes, something needs to change. Regardless of the final decision, the fire department and all of its members will be here to continue to serve the people in this village in their time of need. And we will continue to do that with professionalism as we always have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go on with discussion, possible action, approval of October 2nd, 2024 ambulance subcommittee meeting. Is there a motion to accept that as sent out? And, yeah.
I pulled it up on the board, but my computer did a reboot. So it's trying, it's struggling.
Is there a motion to accept the ambulance subcommittee meeting minutes from October 2nd?
I'll move to accept the minutes as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any additions or corrections? Hearing none, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed, ayes have it. Discussion and in-depth review of ambulance proposal.
So
I went through 86 pages of documents. Yeah, and there's questions I have on it. I do agree with Chief O'Brien that the request for proposals was done in 2021. And going through it, there's things that are outdated on it. If we don't proceed on our own, there definitely should be an update on the request for proposals.
Totally agree with that. And
What's that?
I agree with that. It was brought to the board's attention last
Yeah.
Monday that the contract needs to be updated. There's nothing in the contract that protects this village or its residents.
Right, yeah. We protect the village in that if there's a lawsuit brought against the service, they're on the hook, not us. But believe me, I've been involved in enough, and most people here have, that if there's a lawsuit, they're gonna name everyone that was anywhere near it. So, it would spill over to us. So it doesn't, in here it protects us, on there it doesn't necessarily. Anybody else on the ambulance proposal?
I asked that it be put back on the agenda so that we could go through it if you want me to. I'd be happy to go back through the proposal and cover any items on it if there's any questions.
I do, but I have to get it back in order here. You know, it seems like on this ambulance, implementation of the ambulance service with Village of Kronenwetter, page 12, if you wanna put it up there, please, if you can.
This one?
There's, yes. Contract with Riverside Fire District started, this one says 2023.
The current contract.
Yes, the current
Yeah,
contract.
we actually started with them in
And
22.
it's every year, it renews itself.
No, so in 22, we signed a 1-year contract. Let me say that again. In 2021, late 2021, we signed a 1-year contract with Riverside for 2022.
Right,
In 2022, a 3-year contract was signed.
right, it's an ongoing contract through
Correct.
20,
Through the end of 2025.
right, okay, thank you. And it seems like some of our citizens don't realize, they think it's a free service. Contract includes annual base fee of $5.92 per capita with a 2% increase. So if you got 10 people working, if you got 2 people working, living in your house, it's $12. And with an additional charge to Village of Kronenwetter, $50 per patient care, whether they transport you or not, that patient gets socked with a minimum $50. And then they go on, and I don't know if everyone else.
That isn't the patient, that's the village that gets the $50.
Yes, I'm sorry, the village, yes. And the patient pays, and they have it broke down, Teresa, you're gonna have to help me. Okay, anywhere from, I think the least I saw in there was 200.
Let me get down to it.
I'm sorry, I don't have it right in front of me. I had it
Nope.
earmarked and I took it apart here and I don't have it.
Right here. Patient billing piece.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
And I have a hard copy if you'd like it.
No, I have it here. I was just, what page number is it?
Page.
I got it.
21.
21. Okay. Kronenwetter billing, patient billing rate, non-emergent, $950, emergent, $1,100. Oh, I'm sorry, this is suggested Kronenwetter, I'm sorry. The safer,
You want, so.
yeah,
I think those are the original numbers, but those rates can be changed, and they have changed 3 times. Those are the initial prices, but, Riverside can change the billing rates, and they don't impact the Medicare or Medicaid. What they bill private insurance and private, or self-pay is a substantially higher number. The non-resident rate is $1,500, resident rate is $1,300
Yes.
for the ALS transport, of which contract, it doesn't specify whether we are billed resident or non-resident. And it's my understanding that it's been inconsistently, billed to our residents.
And this, when I was looking at that patient billing rate, resident versus non-resident, that was my question also. Resident being Kronenwetter or being, Riverside, Rothschild, Schofield? It doesn't really clarify. I mean, there's $200
Right,
difference.
the whole,
Yeah,
the whole in contract, yeah.
right. And we had roughly 400 calls last year, correct, Teresa?
Correct. And to be billed at the ALS rate, the only thing that means is that they arrived and did an ALS assessment, so an assessment done by a paramedic or an AEMT. It doesn't mean they did any medications or anything. It's just a paramedic or an AEMT looked you over, that's ALS. That is ALS 1.
Okay. So I think people are somewhat misled. They don't see this ambulance bill unless they're served by the ambulance. They think that, geez, we don't pay for ambulance service now, so why should we pay for it with our own service? Anybody else on review of the ambulance proposal?
I did bring in a copy of all of these and how they have changed from the time that we signed the contract in 2022 to current. The rates, Riverside charges has changed 3 times. It's 3 different, or changed twice since then. I also brought in what Safer has just passed for their billing fees. And it's a little different than what's on here in some cases, but it is still much lower than Riverside. So I'm not sure why they continue to raise their rates when nobody else around us has raised their rates.
Above and beyond the 2%? Or does that?
The billing, the
Okay,
patient
yeah,
billing,
okay,
the individual.
okay.
Keep in mind, you know, some individuals have said, you know, Medicare, Medicaid, but a good portion of Kronenwetter are self-insured individuals, myself included. I have a job, I have insurance. I take an ambulance on January 2nd, I have a deductible. That's going to come out of my pocket. It is not, my insurance is not going to pay that. They are going to say, okay, it's covered, but it's your deductible. I mean, $1,800 compared to what other local municipalities are charging, and that is if it is a resident rate.
Right.
So, I have a question. So if the service itself, Riverside or whoever it is charging the village what we would consider a reasonable rate, but their expenses continue to grow, so therefore it appears that they're going to increase the fee to the patient to make up for the fact that they're charging us maybe below market price.
Right.
So the patient or the resident, in effect, ends up paying much more than they have to because the ambulance provider is making up for lost revenue.
Right, and
Correct.
if they are charging our residents as non-resident rates, even for your Medicare patients, their Medicare may not pay 100% of the bill. Their secondary insurance may not pay 100% of the bill if it is not considered in network. So they may still end up with a portion that is out of their pocket.
So it's kind of an unseen rate increase.
Correct.
You don't realize it's happening because it's going through the insurance company or your private billing.
Right.
It's an unseen tax in a way.
It's been stated that, you know, that doesn't affect all of Kronenwetter, but we should not look at it like that. Even 400 residents or 400 ambulance calls, those are still our residents and they all deserve to be. Have us looking out for them as well.
Okay, anything else on review of the ambulance proposal? I think the biggest thing we should make sure is the board renews the request or service agreement. And
If it is determined to go back out for contract, yes, we should definitely go back out for RFP and make sure that that RFP and that contract contains wording that protects us as a village, as well as my department staff.
Right. And I think when we do get it back, and I'm no attorney, but some of this in here is pretty easy for me to read. So it's pretty straightforward, but there are some things in this request for proposal that just, when Riverside addressed it, we sort of just skimmed over it. It didn't address what we needed for a proposal. Okay, anything else? If not, we'll go on to discussion in Kronenwetter ambulance staff compensation scenarios.
Okay. I'll bring them up here. I included 4 different staffing models. I'm actually gonna pull it up on this Excel because they're on the computer, it'd be easier, I think. No, in the proposal itself did not contain any specific times that, you know, we would staff full time. All that had indicated was that we would have daytime staffing. I wanted to leave that pretty generic so that we had the opportunity to sit back, look at the best staffing models that would fit, right? So in your packet, you have 4 different staffing models. Better. You have 4 different staffing models. I was asked the other day what our preferred staffing model would be. Right now, Mosinee does a 6 to 6, and that seems to work very well. I know on the years that I worked for Rothschild, we did an 8 to 4, and that was a great model, except for the fact that anybody who was taking that overnight shift, if they got paged at 7:30 and had to be to work at 8 o'clock, it was a real struggle. So Alexa and I both had discussed previously that we would suggest starting that day shift at either a 6 or a 7 a.m. and then doing that. So I will pull up that staffing model particularly. So this is a 6 to 6. By doing the 6 to 6, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. full staffing, in other words, somebody is right here in this station doing actual work, not just sitting there watching TV. We would be paying them to do actual work, and whether that work is fire inspections, whether that work is filing papers, there's some items on the fire department side that we could definitely use some, clerical help with. Maybe that's what we have them doing for the first few months, whatever. Estimation of $20 an hour for an AEMT and $19 an hour for an EMT, and then also having the EMR or another EMT that isn't working but on call, and they can be anywhere in the village. That would be like we currently do today, going directly to a patient's home. So there would always be 3 people on every call, at minimum 3 people on every call. And we did this based on Monday through Friday, 6 to 6. You can see, and I have this in a spreadsheet so we can change numbers if you want to, but I calculated out half of our calls come in Monday through Friday between 6 and 6. The majority of our calls honestly come in right in the middle of the day, between 10 and 2, Monday through Friday. Sunday is our lightest day. This model includes $14,400 total pay for drills. So we have trainings twice a month. So there's 24 in a year, 2 hours per drill, approximately 15 EMTs attending those drills. So that would be $14,400 for those. It also includes a deduction of about $37,000 that would be coming out of fire department wages for doing fire inspection and other fire department duties. Some of that would be coming out of 2% dues, some of that would be coming directly out of fire department wages, depending on what we have them doing. If they're doing fire department tasks, they should not be paid through the EMS wages, they should be paid through the fire department wages or the fireside wages, because they are separate. In total, that would be $224,000 in total wages. That does not include FICA, and that was a separate column on the proposal, but it would be, I believe, 7.5%, 7.42%, something like that. I apologize. 7.65%.
7 points. Thank you.
There are two employees currently of the fire department that fall under WRS, which is Wisconsin Retirement System. And that is because we've been here longer than 2011, so we were under the 600 hours a year rule. And it didn't take us long to hit that 600 hours when our call volume reached over 100 in a month between fire and EMS. The rest of the department falls under the 1,200 hour rule, and that is something that we would manage go forward to make sure that we either stay underneath that, but that is a 20%, and so estimation for those two individuals is approximately $5,000 a year, WRS. That would push this up to right around $240,000. This gives us 12-hour coverage 5 days a week, with the remaining of that being on call. I did include, like I said, 4 different models in your packet.
And this one that you said is 6 to 6 is just because of call times and volume? Is that?
Correct, correct.
Okay.
To allow for those people who wanna take overnight shifts, be able to get to a full-time job during the day,
Sure.
but yet still have full-time coverage during the day. 8 to 4, about a third of our calls, cover about a third of our calls. And if we did Sunday through Saturday, 6 to 6, that's 2/3 of our calls. I did include the calls by date and time in your packet as well, and I apologize, everything moved to the right and shouldn't have. So on the top of that page, from 12 to 6 a.m., we have, out of 292 calls, we've had 45 calls between 12 a.m. and 6 a.m. Between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m., 183 of our 292.
So that first column on there, that's partially under Monday, you're saying should be moved over to Sunday?
Yeah.
Sunday, you don't have all blanks.
Correct,
Okay.
correct. It shifted to the right, and I didn't catch up before I created it as a PDF. I should have brought in the grid line so that you could see it a little better, I apologize. And the lower section is the same thing, just broke out by 2-hour windows instead of the 6 hours, instead of the 12-hour window. So that you could specifically see between 6 a.m. and 8 a.m. on Sundays, we have no calls. On 292 calls this year, we've had no calls on a Sunday morning, which I will tell you guys cuts into our breakfast time, because when we get a call on a Sunday morning, we generally go for breakfast after, and we haven't been able to do that all year. But this breaks it down.
So, Teresa, you have, never mind.
No.
I was looking, you have Monday through Friday here, and then you have Sunday through Saturday.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be more, because you're picking up
Correct.
the education.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I did include Sunday through Saturday for both the 8 to 4, as well as,
6 to 6.
the 6 to 6, yeah.
Okay.
We could do something like, 6 to 6, Monday through Friday, and then weekends maybe an 8 to 4. I didn't break that out into a model, but that is something that I could break out.
But your weekends aren't necessarily a higher call volume either, correct? Or did I look at that wrong?
No, correct. So
Okay.
Sundays we've had 29, Saturday we have 47 out of 192, or 292.
Okay, anybody else on ambulance compensation scenarios? Alex, do you have anything?
I mean, really, the point of this was to look at all the options we could have. I mean, any ambulance service proposal should have some built in wiggle room for just in case on the staffing costs being a bit higher. So that's why
Well, it's, as I say, I did include, not to cut you off, Alex, But I did wanna make a note to you on the wages, it does include standby wages, which is 10% of the total cost. Standby means if the pager goes off and somebody else shows up to handle a second call, they would get an hour or whatever the case may be of wages, so I did include that. Sorry, Alex.
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else? If not, we'll go on to item C, discussion. Discussion and possible action on village ambulance service referendum question.
Sure. So some of you might have seen in the last board packet, the referendum, agenda item was centered around the capital costs associated with starting an ambulance service. That is because 2023 Wisconsin Act 12 barred advisory referendums, and, you know, there's political reasons for that, but the fact is, the legislature passed it and the governor signed it, but, unless those referendum questions can only be about 4 specific things, or in regards to capital costs associated with the proposal. So any referendum question we have has to include that part, but you can always add more information as well. But you basically have to ask for a, you know, specific dollar amount.
So you would base your referendum on capital cost versus on preference, is what you're saying? Did I?
Yeah, it would have to be technically, yeah, not technically, it would have to be on that. Now you can always include other language or have, you know, open houses or whatever to.
Sure. Can you hear him okay? Okay,
Yeah.
okay, thank you, Alex. So, one of the questions I think we have to address is, and then I think that's maybe where capital cost comes in, Alex, is I don't wanna point fingers at anybody, but I've had a couple people ask me why we wanna start paying for ambulance when we get it supplied for nothing. And that's just, to me, no, you don't get it supplied for nothing. It's costing everybody in the village, whether you use the service or not, and it's a small cost. But it's a major cost if you have to use it. And I think a lot of people don't realize that because it's covered by their insurance. If you don't look at your EOBs, you never know what they pay for that ambulance coming, arriving at your house. So I think people just, they're not, I don't wanna say it negatively, but I think people don't understand there's no free ride. And that's part of the reason why I got on this subcommittee in the first place, because I think our citizens, and that may be part of the referendum question, I think or the meetings for the referendum, I think our citizens have to know what it is here with Safer or Riverside, and what it would be here, and it may be a little more, but the money is coming back to us then. Right now, all the money that gets paid out goes to Riverside or Safer. And I don't know that they're making a lot of money on it, but being the resident, non-resident, we are subsidizing their resident. From what I see, and like I say, I went through 86 pages of this stuff. By the time I got towards the end of it, I was sort of spinning in circles. So, but I think that's part of the reason we have to have these public hearings to develop a referendum question is there's people that aren't aware they're being misled, that this is gonna cost us a boatload of money. And the very first meeting I sat in here, how many of us rent a house versus owning it? Everyone in this room, I bet you, owns their own home. And that's what I view this at. It may be a simple scenario, but that's what I view this at. We're renting a service up the road when we should be paying for our own and having it as our own. I guess I'll get off my soapbox.
Yeah, I mean, the critical components of what's funding them, right? I mean, we have a straight expense in our general fund that pays our EMS budget. And the contract price we paid Riverside is not our entire EMS budget. And that's part of what keeps that supposed cost that goes to Riverside down a bit. We still have to pay we still have an EMS budget besides the Riverside contract. On top of that, then Riverside basically bills our, our residents when they go on a call, then for their costs. And the goal, basically, of this, proposal is to have the revenues we pull in cover our operating expenses, not cover our capital costs per se, but if you have it covering our operating expenses, then you come out, equal to or greater than, you make a huge impact to our general fund deficit, which, I don't know if anyone listened or attended or reviewed the last board meeting, but our general fund in the village of Kronenwetter is in not so good of shape. By having your own ambulance service, you're allowed to use some of the other financing tools, such as getting grants or using debt levy. And in the debt levy, we have a debt fund surplus. So in theory, any tax hikes associated with that debt levy could be minimal to zero, depending on what all else we do as a village. But it allows an extra tool too. I think that's one of the piece that's hard to understand out there, that we don't have many options right now with the status of our general fund.
It was mentioned about the response time for if we have our own versus Riverside. And don't get me wrong, Riverside has provided an excellent service, I think. I mean, there may be downfalls that we have to address, but we have the time study, and the biggest difference in time is 8 minutes. Well, if I have a loved one laying on the floor with a heart attack or serious health issues or bleeding out, 8 minutes is like a lifetime. There's several that are 7 minutes, and even 1 minute. I know when my father-in-law passed away, Kronenwetter first responders were there, and I'm gonna say 5 minutes. It could have been 1 or 2. It seemed like an hour. So this is the minutes. Oh, right there. Okay, thank you. When Riverside Fire Department arrived versus when Kronenwetter first responders were on the scene. So it's a big difference if you're the one watching your loved one with issues. So okay, Alex, help me out here. So how do we start forming this referendum question?
Well, I think a couple things come to my mind, right? We know we have to center it around the capital costs associated with starting ambulance service, right? That's kind of the heart and soul. I think we would want to include what those projected capital costs would not exceed. And from there, input. So I was kind of, I don't know, I was picturing it in my brain. Do you have a simple question, like just around the capital costs, or as simple as possible? And then maybe like two other potential, one or two other drafts, like if we want to include additional language, like, ambulance service. What else might be entailed in there? I'm not a legal expert, so I think that was some of my thinking was, do we want, if we can add some more language or information somehow in the question, I think it would make sense if we can provide additional background and to what extent that's legal.
Sure, I think we'd have to have enough background information so people, when they, this question on the ballot for this election is ridiculous, but I think you can word it to confuse people, or word it to keep it as plain and simple as can be, so they know what they're reading. I think that should be our goal, that we address the people, so, and it may be a paragraph. I mean, it may have to be something that, would address a lot of the questions with these public meetings. I think we can address a lot of them there, but when you get in the ballot box, you have to know what you're voting for.
Well, I agree with what you're saying there, Rick. The question itself has to be very clear to the person that's reading it. But the numbers that are in that question, if we have to include our capital cost, we have to have an exact correct number, which means we need to agree on a staffing model. Which one are we gonna use? What's the hourly rate gonna be? What is the, the FICA costs, possible insurance benefit costs? We have to have all those numbers correct. We have to have the vehicle cost, the equipment cost. All those things have to be exact, so the number that's on the ballot in the question is accurate. So it's gonna take time. We're gonna have to decide what staffing model, which vehicle do we want, et cetera. We have to get all these numbers in line and then put it into plain language.
Yes. And how, do you have all those numbers on the question, or do you have them as a proposal ahead of the ballot box? I don't know.
Well, I think at the public meetings, you explain all these things and how the number was derived. Then the question itself might be just a simple, should Kronenwetter provide an ambulance service with an EMT level service costing, and I'm just throwing numbers, $1.50 on the tax levy, or whatever the number might be.
Sure.
Just condense it down to a simple question. Do you approve that level of service at that cost? Yes or no?
Right, okay. Yeah, because they have to know what they're voting for. That just hurts me when you get in the booth and you don't.
Right,
you know
yeah,
what you're voting
it's
for.
convoluted.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. In terms of operating costs and whatnot, right, that's not really a capital cost. Really looking at the equipment, the ambulances, if we want to take out, call it a capital cost, but I'll call it our starting capital, was recommended for, kind of keeping the year's billing revenue on hand. And so,
But you would have to include the staffing cost on it. At least I know we can't say this is what it's gonna cost Kronenwetter to staff our ambulance next year without some variables in there. I mean, if you have 400 calls versus 200 or versus 800, it's gonna be a huge difference.
Now, the staffing, the referendum would need to include the capital expenses for the ambulances. How do you include operating expenses on that? when we wouldn't be asking for any more money to be coming out of the levy for those operating expenses. I mean, if you were asking for more money coming out of the levy, then yes, the referendum should include that, but
It's not, yeah.
we're not.
I guess that's where the attorney would have to get involved and help us construct the question properly.
I mean, yeah, I guess that's, operating costs, that's the thing, like now we know, right, that, the 2% number, that was in Mr. Brian's proposal, right, our estimated expense, continuing attorney contract with that, our whole EMS budget is about $139,000 and change. That's entirely out of the general levy, so the operating cost, right, that's how this is structured due to the revenues coming in. The total dollars coming out of the general levy will be going down,
Correct.
almost certainly
Right.
on that. I mean, I guess I'm thinking, that we really do need attorney input on this. What do we want the attorney's input as part of drafting this question? I think that would be wise, or we could come up with something right now, the attorney kind of reviewing it to provide some input, and then still have them show up to, I guess, finalize. I guess I call it a draft for him to review, have him provide input, have him show up at the next meeting. And, work it all together then? Or do we just wanna wait till the next meeting to have him from the starting point drafting this? Because that's the question I'm asking.
Well, I guess I agree, the attorney's work should basically start. I mean, he'll have the information, or can get the information. But if, as a subcommittee, we don't have any authority to give the attorney orders to go ahead and start this, so it would have to actually come from the board to the attorney. And I think that's who has to get the ball rolling, is the attorney, and give us, with the blessing of the village board. Right?
It could be the board, and I believe the administrator or village president, which are one and the same right now, also authorize the village attorney. But I mean, we could also request from the board, request the attorney work with the committee on drafting the questions or something like that.
What was their sentiment? Can anybody tell me what was their sentiment at the last meeting? I couldn't make that. I was does the village board even feel that we should continue pursuing this, or?
The referendum passed 4-2.
No, okay.
The 2 board members dissented.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I don't know if anybody's aware, but the village of Fredonia, which is down in southeast Wisconsin, kind of near Milwaukee, they have a referendum on the ballot coming up in 2 weeks. They want to increase their paramedic service. And if you'll allow me, I'll just read their question, just so you get an idea of what we have to do. Okay. Shall the village of Fredonia be allowed to exceed the levy limit and increase the levy for the next fiscal year, 2025, for the purpose of hiring and retaining fire and emergency medical services personnel and capital purchases for the village of Fredonia Fire Department by a total of 16.3%, which results in a levy of $1,422,608 on an ongoing basis. So they included personnel and capital equipment.
Although, to clarify that one, they talked about exceeding the levy limit. They would basically, because of the levy limit laws, you're allowed to increase your general levy with a referendum. So I'm guessing that was a lot of it,
like the school board. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Much like the school boards do, Bernie. But, not to put you on the spot, but that's what they do, they ask to increase their levy limit to add on to the school, correct?
You know? Well, there's a copy of the Mosinee referendum,
Yeah.
right in the Mosinee Times.
Right, I saw it.
I mean, you know, as an example, I mean, you know, that's not gospel or anything like that, but, I mean, it's a description, you know, what's involved. But the big thing there was the capital item for the building, you know, that was the thing. But they also included what they wanted to do with the technology and, you know, all the other stuff, background, whatever you wanna call it. But the referendum itself was principally to do with the building structure, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anything else on the ambulance service referendum question?
Well, I guess, do we want to like, do a motion to ask the village board for approval and the village attorney attend the next ambulance committee meeting to, advise us in crafting the question?
Sounds like a pretty good motion. Yeah, because I
I
said,
move.
what, okay,
I move to ask the village board for access to the village attorney and for him to attend our next ambulance subcommittee meeting, in order to provide advice in drafting, an advisory ambulance referendum question.
okay. Alex made the motion, is there a
I'll
second?
second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote.
Alex Edvick,
Alex?
Pat Kilstone,
Yes.
Rick Smith,
Yes.
Laura Berry,
Yes.
Pam Kyjak,
Yes.
Judy Freeze.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We'll go on to item D, discussion possible action on alternatives and scope of potential third-party review of ambulance service options.
So I put this agenda item worded this way to be purposely broad, because there's been discussion about, a potential RFP. The original motion that made this committee, as I said, is the joint implementation and feasibility committee was, you know, there's been mention of a third-party review of feasibility of this proposal. The idea is to make this broad, because anytime you want an RFP for this, I think we need to have some scope and structure to what we're asking for, if we're looking to have a third-party review this ambulance service proposal. That's making sense.
Yeah, when I read this, Alex, I thought this would be another one for our village attorney, is that correct, or am I looking in the wrong direction? That's what I do. That's what I
I don't
do.
think it's just, well, I mean, I don't know if it hurts to have his input. I mean, if he's gonna be at the next meeting, it doesn't hurt to have his input, but also, right, we've done a fair amount of work on this, right? We don't necessarily want a third party to completely start from scratch, right? We want them to take into consideration the work that's been done and input provided. That's making sense.
And I guess that was my question, so this third party would more than likely be the same attorney that we're having draw up our referendum question.
Well, I'm thinking this, you know, I mean, 'cause I think we would want someone who's an expert in municipal finance and ambulance services. I mean, I think that's really what that feasibility RFP, the board wanted is about, right? A sanity check, if you will. That we're not
Sure.
missing something.
But I don't know that we can name a third party to review it tonight without having some input from both the village board and Chief O'Brien. I mean,
Right, in that original motion too, I just wanna clarify, right? They did, so at the time, we had an administrator at the time, Pete Camper. Right, that motion wasn't for the committee to create the RFPs for staff, it was for the administrator, but we don't have an administrator, so. I think this is also an item asking for direction from the village board on this, given that the original motion isn't possible as written. Does that make sense?
So, Alex, I have the meeting minutes up from that meeting where the motions were made. I have that up on the board so everybody can see it. There were 3 motions made that night. One was to create the ambulance service implementation subcommittee, which is this group. That was passed 6-1. The second motion, was to direct the ambulance subcommittee to work with the fire department on implementing the ambulance. That was passed 4-3. And then the third motion was, to create, or direct staff to draft an RFP for a feasibility study on the ambulance service, and that was passed 7-0.
So, yeah, I think
These meeting
that's
minutes have
partially
been,
this question too, right? There has to be some sort of scope for, what we're requesting as a village with RFP, and directing staff that the time the administrator, that he would take that on, he left shortly after, and now we're in limbo. So,
so I guess my question is, how do we get a third party review of the ambulance service options?
well, I mean, I think that's kind of what, that was something what trustee Iden was saying. A lot, right? So many people reference James Small, yada yada, with that. I don't necessarily think I don't think that's appropriate either. I think what it is, I think the committee and the village and the citizens of the village could use clarity from the village board on what our next steps are, given that we don't have an administrator, and that administrator that said he's gonna take on drafting the RFP is no longer here, so I'm thinking we need clarity from the village board on how to even go about doing the RFP for reviewing our work.
Okay, so we should send this, oh, not good. I think this may be where the RFP ties in for our service agreement with whether it be Safer or Riverside. Or Mosinee. So, do we put out RFPs again and have it third party review those along with our proposal?
Yeah,
And who
I
is the
think
third
that would
party?
make sense. And to do it in concert with the committee, I guess. I mean, I didn't think of that part, but yeah.
So, okay, I guess we're ready for a motion. If we get a motion, oh, go ahead.
Well, I guess I'm a little confused, so now we're saying we want a third-party review of not only the ambulance service proposal, but also of the RFPs that we're going to solicit from from Riverside and Safer. I mean, I don't quite understand that.
And I don't see that as being something we would have back in time to move forward with the referendum if.
If you're going back and forth, this isn't even gonna get settled.
Right, and I guess that's what I'm stumped on,
Yeah.
where do we go with this? I mean,
I think there's a point here though, I think the reason for, the statement like getting the RFPs is for comparison's sake, for, transparency for village residents. I think that it's gonna end up coming back around. We can push and push and push, but something's gonna come back around and say, where did we stand with this, and this? So I think, I don't know, I know it's a lot of work, but I think that's a consideration.
a good point. I think if we just go ahead with a third party review of our ambulance recommendations, our own, and we don't review the RFPs, that's really gonna have people in uproar because, well, you guys just pushed this through on your own, and you didn't even look for alternatives.
Right.
So, good point,
Yeah, I joined this committee as a neutral party, as a party who wanted to hear all sides do what's best for the village, and if we're truly doing that, I think we need to investigate every portion of what's going on, and that will help us move forward in a positive manner, whichever manner that is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We have to compare our ambulance service proposal with the alternatives, because we have a contract with Riverside or whatever is the best result of a RFP for ambulance service. We contract out. It's a mess. That's of how much waffling's been going on. What I do know, is that, trustee Charneski was seconded by Hayden, so we'll be on the next village board meeting agenda on Monday, is just going ahead and renewing for 5 years with Riverside. I don't know how that will go, I'm not gonna stipulate on, I don't know what other supporting information.
Why are we here?
Yep.
We concluded with that. We've always kind of been in limbo, and this whole thing's been hard to get off the ground.
Yes, it has been, and I just heard a comment from Judy, what are we doing here then? If the board's gonna undercut us and just go ahead with, well, yeah, let's just renew our proposal with Riverside and forget about it. And that's fine if that's what they wanna do, but putting it bluntly, don't waste my time and everybody else up here and in here if you're gonna pull the rug out from under us when it gets down to it.
Yeah, this is solely volunteer, this is
Right.
not compensated, this is time away from
Yeah.
families, friends.
Right?
That's very poor. And I'm saying that as a neutral party.
Yeah, and I didn't hear everything you had to say, but I agree. It's frustrating. Every step of the way, get stopped from even getting going at all. third-party review of our ambulance service compared to the alternatives. You know, I think, I mean, I don't know what staff can even draft that RFP. I think that's kind of what this item is.
Right.
Asking clarification from the village board on what are we supposed to do with the third-party review.
I guess that's where I'm confused, what, third party review of who or not.
I thought we were the third party review and, you know, our, opinion counted, but I don't know if that's true now.
Doesn't sound like it, does it?
No, it doesn't.
And I think,
Please don't take that as it is the entire board, because it is not.
I think, just my thoughts, I think we should send it back to the board with our recommendation that we have a third-party review of all ambulance service options.
And that they don't sign that.
And that they do not renew a request for, services from Safer or Riverside or Mosinee
Just
until this
postpone
review
it.
is complete.
Right.
No action taken at this time.
So,
Very well put there.
That sounds like a motion.
I know it does.
I do have a question with that. Who will be serving the village if we do not? I mean, because we're kind of in a stalemate here.
We have a year.
Okay, we still have a year.
We have
January first,
25.
26.
We have to have a decision made by October 1st of 2025.
And that was the other part of my, what I wanted to address, and hearing what you're saying, Alex, if we do end up going with an outside vendor, for lack of a better term, just my thoughts, I think it should be minimum 5-year contract. I know we used to go 2 or 3 years, and that isn't enough. You can't compare apples to apples, because if you're comparing a 5-year contract versus having our own, it's a little fair, but it still can be skewed, because if we have our own ambulance, we don't plan on it being here for 5 years. We plan on it being here like the fire department was formed in whatever it was. And it's here for good. Whether they merge with another department or not, we still have our fire station, our own services. But, okay, so is there a motion to send this back to the village board to have a third-party review of the ambulance, of all ambulance service options, including our own,
I'll make that.
Riverside, Safer, Mosinee?
Can we have a time limit on that?
Oh, no, go ahead, Alex, because before what, Alex?
Oh, I'm gonna say, you said, is there a motion? I guess I'd be willing to make that motion. I move to, recommend to the village board that, I move to recommend to the village board that, decision regarding continuation of ambulance services not be made prior to the result of a third-party review of all ambulance service alternatives, including our own.
Okay, you heard the motion? Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. Roll call.
Alan Svednick,
Alex, you're up.
Pat Kilston,
Yes.
Rick Smith,
Yes.
Laura Berry,
Yes.
Pam Kyjak,
Yes.
Judy Freeze.
Yes. You do have a question?
Oh, I'm sorry,
That's okay. Alex, will that be on the next board meeting? We don't want any delay for 3 or 4 weeks.
We can get that in the next board meeting.
okay.
On the next,
If we're ahead of the agenda setting, we make the recommendation of the outcome.
Okay, next board meeting.
Monday, right? Okay. Jennifer, you tell me sure. I don't
Okay,
want
old
2
business.
weeks down the road.
Discussion, discussion financial analysts and updates and scenarios. I think you did a pretty good job of all of this. I don't know if it's all from you or not, but, the financial, updates and scenarios, I think. And I did have some questions and you addressed them in here. I don't have it in front of me right now. What page are you on?
26?
Well, these are blur on the bottom. It's in Mosen East Fire District. And I don't know if this is information you presented last month, Bernie, or not. But
I'll give you the budget from the Mosinee, that was for, yeah, and they're implementing, or they're working on their 25 budget
25,
right now.
yes.
And I don't know if it was approved last night, or Monday night or not. I don't think so.
Mosinee has included a $5 increase to their EMTs,
Yeah,
as well as a 50-cent increase to their on-call pay, I believe making it
Yeah.
$5
yeah.
an hour. But that bumps their EMT rate up to, our rate, so.
Looking at this, then they must have 3 that are
They have their fire chief and 2 others that.
pretty much full-time.
Full-time,
Yeah,
correct.
okay.
So some of their full-time staff wages are all coming out of EMS. You'll notice that their fire department wages are quite low.
Yeah.
So even though their full-time staff members are doing fire duties as well, it's all coming out of their EMS budget. So you have to kind of remember that they're firefighters and they're being paid out of EMS, so.
They get about 650 calls a year, and they average about $380 a call.
They are a basic level service. They
Yeah,
cannot charge, they cannot
I
charge
guess
for.
they're only AMTs right now, and they're trying to upgrade it to AEMTs.
Right, they're only EMT.
I don't know if
staff
they'll
right
get it
now.
or not.
Correct. They used to be, Mosinee used to be an EMT level service, or old people call it an IV tech service. But they lost that a couple of years ago, and they're working on getting that back. But currently, they can only bill at the basic level service. They cannot bill for any ALS services, because that is not their base level service. So they would get a lower rate, correct?
Yeah.
Anything else on financial updates scenarios? Anything?
Well, like-
Oh, go ahead.
Only thing I was gonna say, right, I mean, so there's some spreadsheets out there, right?
Yep.
You know, numbers that put in, right, it's basically just a financial model. You know, decided that you can update that and do other sensitivities, you know, we discussed some, like, what if we get just Riverside's revenue, or wages are a bit higher, or whatever, right? It examines the impact to each of the funds and thus the total levy, you know, that fund and, you know, or the debt levy and the general levy, right? The model itself, right? It's just math, basically.
Right.
You know, what we're basically arguing about, in my opinion, is we're just arguing about what inputs are going in there. You know, I've seen in a lot of the rhetoric out there, any acknowledgement of any of the aspects of the financial model, at all. That's been published out there, and, I just wanted to point to that the spreadsheet is built, very easy to look at, all kinds of different scenarios, and it would be easy to enhance the model too, if we wanna look at other things, you know, other, you know, different numbers for grants, for example, or, you know, whatever. But I just wanted to point that out, it's easy to update that, financial model. We can even update some of the language that, you know, how it explains some of the pieces. And I built that just based information I received, you know, with Teresa's proposal, Riverside's reports, you know, all of that. But I just wanna make that point too, that it would be, you know, I don't know, like I said, what the board will do, but ultimately they do wanna do this third-party review. I mean, we as a committee can very easily and quickly look at a lot of different scenarios with that built out. I just wanted to say that.
And that's the reason we need this third-party review, because you have to compare those scenario apples to apples. You know, looking at this, I lost my agenda, but looking at this, implementation of ambulance service in Village of Kronenwetter, right out of the gate, we're out, if you take 400 calls a year, we pay Riverside $50,550 right off the top, per capita, $592. That's before, I mean, that's to have a contract. And then it's $50 per patient care report, so that's another 20,000, if it's 400 calls. So we're out $70,000 or $70,500 without anything. I mean, that's what our cost is, before they even run an ambulance in the village. Sorry, not before they do, because that's taken into account the 400 calls. But it's costing us $70,000 up front, not even including the contract.
Well, right, yeah, what they bill, or, I mean, so we also have the rest of the EMS budget as part of that contract that helps keep it at that level, right? We still have EMTs, EMRs, you know, at various levels in this village on call in our fire department that are dispatched on call. We're still paying them as it is now. I mean, so the contract with Riverside is not our entire expense in regards to providing EMS to our residents. So anytime there's a dollar amount per capita that's expressed as like $8 or $9 per capita, well, our contract with Riverside isn't even half, you know, it's about half of our budget at that. So I just wanted to address that piece too. I mean, it's leaving out pieces, if you're gonna use that gross cost per capita, or the gross cost out of the levy per capita. I mean, I don't think it's a fair comparison at all. They're saying, oh, it's gonna be $20 with the, you know, or $25 per capita with ambulance service run by Kronenwetter versus $892 or wherever it's spread all over. No, because our current cost isn't $892 right now. It's projected for 2026, it's about $139,000 divided by, what, 8,500 residents?
Yeah.
And we can add that to the model pretty easily.
Right.
I mean, that's about, you know, just under 1,650 as it is now, just with Riverside.
1637, it looks like. Page 1637, it looks like, page 20.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, yeah. And projected would be 1287?
Yeah, because of the revenues.
Right,
Because we
right.
get revenues, the levy, like what we're talking about is what is the taxpayer net expense under it?
I just want to mention, and this is for Alex's information, I had a very lengthy discussion with one of the trustees about this financial model. And he said he had never seen it, didn't know anything about it. So I think maybe the board has to be educated a little more as to what this financial model looks like and what it really does. because I was shocked. This guy said he'd never seen it, didn't know anything about it. So I was very surprised.
Hasn't it been
Yeah,
in your packets?
I'm not gonna speculate on who it was, but I've had conversations with other trustees. I've explained this exists. I've offered to sit down and share it and walk through all the aspects of it and take questions. I've not been taken up on that offer. I'm just gonna leave it at that. I've shared it too. I don't know, you know, I mean, it's in a, like this, you know, spreadsheet model is in the shared drive, right? And it's not, I mean, I have a hard copy of it on the computer, but, right, I made it available on the shared drive of the village so that it can be shared with anybody electronically.
Well, and I would also like to point out that these numbers are not pulled out of thin air. These numbers have been, they're actual numbers, and they've been reviewed by the finance director of the village, and she agrees that this is a very accurate financial model. So I think the trustees owe it to the village to review this model and decide for themselves if it makes sense. I mean, on paper, it looks like it makes terrific sense. But again, they have to be educated, and evidently that hasn't happened.
They have to read your packet.
Yeah, on paper, that, like you say, it makes perfect sense. I'm thinking, contrary to what we're hearing, I'm thinking, why don't we have our own ambulance already? You know, I mean, if you're saving $4 a head, right, in the village.
But I think there's a very negative mindset among some people.
Yeah,
And you can show them the best numbers in the world, it's not gonna change their mind.
right. Can you put page 20 up there, Teresa? Let's walk through it. I don't know, Bernie, do you get this information?
Hey, what,
Okay.
I mean, it's public
Okay,
information for all
this is-
concerned.
page 20 is
You
out
know,
of my proposal or out of our proposal?
sharing it.
Rendering.
I don't know if it will work out, like, if you share the shared drive link, if that'll work, you might have to save it as a Excel file out of that. Share external, the village's IT system.
Okay.
I guess I'm not 100% sure, their plans, power lines, whatever, right, garbage in, garbage out, right, what they're arguing is the assumptions and the reasons for those assumptions, what goes into the model. The model is supposed to be a tool to evaluate all the information we do have.
So,
Bernie has a question, and I'm gonna let him speak because I asked him a question, a couple things. Go ahead, Bernie.
Mr. Chairman, on that one table there, it's so stated that our ambulance service is $65,000 to Riverside. And it should be 50,000 or 51 or whatever it is there. And then the other thing is that bothers me is you spoke about our president EMS, and what's his name? Alex is right. I mean, our president EMS is costing us it's costing us more than our ambulance service right now. Right? Do you guys realize that?
Right. Yeah.
Okay, then with that being said
When you
is,
say when you say our EMS service, just to clarify, our existing EMS budget?
yeah. Right, our active, if you look at our Kronenwetter spreadsheets, I mean, other than this, there's a column in there on our EMS and fire that states that, and it checks. But the other thing that you brought up too, Alex, is that, okay, we started ambulance service, all of a sudden our present EMS structure just goes away, but that's not true.
No.
We'll still continue to have that $50,000 plus, but nobody shows that anyplace. And this is I mean, I don't care, personally, but the thing is, that should be as part of it also, but it never is. It just kind of goes into thin air. I mean, we adopt that. Even when we get our own, we're still adopting our present EMS costs.
Not in total, because this ambulance crew will be part of our EMS cost.
But they're still on call, Mr. Smith, on the
Yeah.
weekend, and they got they got their own equipment. I mean, hey, they're staffed up. I mean, I give them credit. I believe, I like to somebody do research. I bet you we got the best EMS response in the state of Wisconsin. I mean, I defy anybody to check that out. But it does come at a cost, and somebody was trying to convince me a year ago, oh, they don't get paid. Well, if you just look at the wages, that's month by month, they get paid their social security and all the deductions that's in there, and retirement. They even got a line for retirement. I mean, hey, well, where does that go then when we get our own ambulance? That's not gonna disappear. Because they're supposed to, in her notes, she says, we will arrive ahead of the ambulance. And they probably will. And they're probably doing it now if they live close enough to the patient, as you well know, Rick.
Yeah.
It's just like the fire department, right? If they can live closer, they'll get there before the fire truck gets there.
Yeah.
And it's the same with this EMS service. I mean, I'm not knocking our EMS service. You know, like I say, they're probably the best in the state. I mean, I would like to see somebody do some research on that and verify it. I mean, it's a credit to them for what they're doing. You know, but there is a cost for it.
Yes, there's a cost for it. Part of it will be, and I don't have the numbers, I don't know if Teresa,
And
part of it will be absorbed
all
when
of
we
it.
have our own.
All of it would be. So right now, currently, the wages for our first responders are up on the board. That is our current EMS budget. We do budget $65,000 for Riverside, and that number has been budgeted for many years for our contracted service provider. It hasn't changed. Not all of that is used, but that is what is budgeted, so that at the end of the year, when they're looking at the budget, that is what they are expecting to take out of the levy. Correct? Then
Well, put that Riverside number in the budget, including all the calls, right? The $50 a call.
correct, that's also in the budget,
Right.
yes.
So, yeah.
But if you look at,
So, like Rick had said, with 400 calls at $50.
Yeah.
Right, then
that's another $22,000.
$20,000 to add to the Riverside budget. That we, our base cost with no calls.
Yep.
Then on top of that, yes, we do have our first responders that go out. So basically in, Chief O'Brien's proposal, right, you have budgeted or projected expense for, call time, on call, and our standby. Right, so that the standby rate, you said, is about 10% of the new budget?
Yep.
Ish. You know, that would basically be like what we have now, correct? Like, so,
Correct.
because that's what I'm saying,
So,
when we dispatch someone ahead of the ambulance, right, that's already factored into your projected wage expense,
yes,
correct?
yes. So we have always proposed that first responders, and I say that lightly because if we go to an AEMT level, those first responders could have a license level up to that, right? Would be would be dispatched at the same time that the ambulance is, and would go directly to that one at minimum, one person would go to that patient's home, and I said that would continue. Part of that is so that they could be that third person on the ambulance, should it be needed, and assist with lifting assistance and such. Your ambulance can run with just 2 people. Occasionally you need a third person, so I didn't want to discredit the first responders that can go directly to their home. The staffing, every staffing model I have up here includes at least one additional person being on call 24/7, 365, outside of the 2 ambulance crew members that are either being staffed or on call, and that person would go directly to their home.
So,
Yeah,
just what Bernie said, but you have it figured in there. But just what Bernie said, our first responders are not gonna go away because we have an ambulance. And if I'm living next
But
door
it
to you,
won't
and
be,
why should I wait for the ambulance if I'm not
right,
the on-call person?
Correct.
As a first responder.
Cause I mean, like I said, sometimes you need that third person on an ambulance. There've been a number of times where we have had to be a driver on the ambulance because that second EMT is needed in the back of the ambulance. I didn't wanna get rid of that, and should not. But their wages are included in the total wages. They aren't going to be, it's not going to be a separate wage category, it's all one wage.
Okay. Did that answer your question, Rick? Someone? No?
But I mean, you should separate them. I mean, you should, and you don't. The only way you get a true cost is put the numbers up there with your first responders, ambulance. Ambulance is separate from first responders. Otherwise, if you aren't gonna do that, then have everything ambulance like the rest of the communities do. They don't have no first responders. Rothschild, Schofield, and Rim Mountain, they don't have any first responders, period. Their money goes to the ambulance. They don't have a separate fund for first responders. Now, like you said, when they contract out to the villages, various ones, because they live there and due to the location and stuff, and of course, out here too, out by, Hatley, you know, that they have a couple of first responders, not a lot of them, but they got a couple of them, and of course, they have troubles, but anyhow, that's beside the point. But, there again, your clarity would be a lot better if you just, 1, 2, and now you got a pickup truck, and you got that fully loaded, and you aren't gonna divorce that for the ambulance, I'm sure. You're gonna continue to you aren't gonna sell the pickup truck, I'm sure.
Correct, but the pickup truck will continue to be used to get a third person to that ambulance call. And I will tell you that even Riverside and Safer generally send a second vehicle to their ambulance calls, so that should that third person be needed, even if that call isn't here. But one thing I wanna make sure you understand is Kronenwetter isn't like Rothschild and Schofield. Those two municipalities combined are 9 miles. We are 52. You can't compare us to those municipalities. We also have more people in our village than they do combined.
You know, if you look at the call list, like Mr. Smith did earlier, some of our calls over here where the population is 4 and 5, 6 minutes. I mean, they can't do much better in their own community than the response. You know, we're so fortunate here in Kronenwetter. This is our last call. We've been all over with ambulance services, you know, Rick. We've been in the startup of Mosinee.
Yep.
You know, we held hands with them. Of course, we were the most populated, so we had the biggest cost, right? And then we went back to good old Schofield. Like you said, we could never get along with Rothschild. I mean, you know.
Well, no, Rothschild couldn't leave the village at the time, because they had a contract with whether it was a Weyerhaeuser, American Can, or Domtar. But that went on. They weren't allowed to leave the village. That's the number one reason.
Yeah, so, but then we did go back to good old Schofield, you know, and look how far away that was, Rick. I mean, you know, you take out there where the Walkowskis live out there, but the forest.
They got a pack of lunch to get out there.
Well, hey, I mean, whatever it takes, right? I mean, maybe a pack horse besides, yeah. But
Well,
I mean,
that's where our first responders come in.
no, I understand, and we didn't have first responders back then, Rick.
Well,
We had 1 or 2 of them, that's about all, 20 years ago, you know, that's before Teresa ever arrived, I mean, that's, you know.
yeah, no, I know.
And it was just the way it was, I mean, hell, I mean, and at my age now, I'm really not interested in quick response anymore.
I knew that.
Yeah.
I didn't do that.
Okay.
Well, I think at the
Thank you,
meetings,
Rick.
we should have this page
Yeah.
for our residents to
This
see.
should be one of the pages. that
Because
we
it's
present.
simple, we gotta keep it simple, and
Some of the residents have seen this, but.
I don't think very many. But, we are the best because of our first responders.
Okay, anything else are we on project tracking spreadsheet? I think we sort of went right over that, but Teresa, do you have anything else on that?
I don't, this was just these are the calendar
Okay.
of the tasks that We're supposed to, the committee is supposed to be getting based on the document that was given by the former administrator.
But there too, it doesn't pay for us to dig into that tracking spreadsheet if we get halfway through it and the board says we're not interested.
Yeah,
So I
if they
think-
sign up for 5 years.
We have to make sure we have the go-ahead to continue on what we're doing.
In addition to this committee's, ask to the board to not sign that contract, I will also be making a statement that if that is the direction they want to go, outside of us, even looking at the total feasibility of everything, that they go back out for RFP, that contract needs fixed.
Yeah, it does.
It does not protect this village or its residents, and it needs to be fixed.
And who does the contract?
Well, we did a request for proposal, and you have that in your package. And Riverside responded to it, and some of it was sort of gray.
Missy, I'll make a comment on that. In their own response to that RFP, I recall this back on the page. You'll find it on page 57 of your packet.
Okay.
Their own response to that RFP, a statement, a higher level of service does not always mean you are getting better service. 90 to 95% of the patients transported are BLS or AEMT level patients. Those are my exact words in my proposal.
Yep.
This came from Riverside in their RFP response to us. Your current base fee to the patient for paramedic service is much higher, and they get billed that higher rate even if they're only utilize BLS skills 90% of the time. They are doing that exact same thing to us now.
Yep. Yeah, they're billing us for the higher rate, and it's
Correct.
basic, yep.
So it's kind of funny how they went from this RFP in 2021 to doing the same exact thing that they said was not appropriate.
Okay, anything else on tracking the spreadsheet? Committee dialogue, question answer session, I can't talk anymore. I think we've probably addressed the questions that we have to present to the board to see if we should even go on with what we're doing.
Will there be committee members at the board meeting on Monday that will speak on behalf of the committee?
I am on being there, I don't.
I think that is important because Alex gets beat up by a couple of the other trustees, and I really think this committee needs some representation at that meeting.
I planned on being at the last one, but I ended up working.
This is what it's got to look like.
I mean, I agree, I mean, from my perspective, right, I mean, you know, we're effectively all volunteering here, but especially, you know, the other members of the committee, you know, graciously volunteered your time to try to work on something positive for the village. You know, if you can't make it, you know, I know the village has a policy for making public comment. You know, it's a strong opinion of mine that we should be providing deference to people that volunteer their time to be on a committee, right? I mean, shows you care about our village. Two, you've showed up to these meetings, you've done your work, your research, you've done a lot of work. And I think it's okay to voice, I mean, I know it's advisory, committees are advisory in the village, but at the same time, you know, there's a lot going on in this village, and I don't think it's been good for our reputation. I don't think it's sent a good signal to our volunteer fire department, keyword volunteer, and the volunteers that have spent a lot of time away from their families working on this. So I encourage people to make their voices heard either by writing or
Yeah, I plan on being there, unless something comes up again. I did plan on being at the last one, couldn't make it. But yeah, and I agree, I think the board has the privilege to open it up to committee members, subcommittee members, to give a full report, and I don't think the 3-minute time limit may be appropriate for, not just this subcommittee, other subcommittees. I know when I chaired the board, the committees would come and I remember very distinctly Judy Akey, she'd give her a half-hour report sometime. And it's information that the board didn't hear until she gave it to us. So I think if necessary, just my thoughts, the board should allow extra time for committee members to give reports. Okay, anything else? Question and answer session. Consideration of items for a future agenda. I think we should be sure that the item for discussion with our attorney on moving forward with this, constructing a referendum question, that should be on our future agenda, and maybe everyone thinking that he will be able to make it. I think we have to be optimistic that the village board is gonna allow us to use the attorney for helping us form a referendum question.
Should that be a closed session?
I'm sorry.
Should that be a closed session agenda item? Or an open session?
No, it doesn't have to be closed session for that, because we're not taking into consideration any.
Gotcha. Yep.
Okay, next meeting, 6 p.m. Tuesday, November 19th. Amazing. Okay, we're up for adjournment. Is there a second? All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it.